think that's my housekeeping part. Let's see. So I just want to again say how glad we are to welcome Hollee McCormick and Ryan Wagner from the Allamakee Clayton Electric Cooperative team. Hollee is the Allamakee Clayton Electric Co-op's Executive Vice President and General Manager, and Ryan is our REC's Member Service Manager. So thank you both very much for being here, and thank you for taking the time to field some questions. Hollee, do you want to start us off and just tell us a little bit more about your position with the REC, and then maybe kind of a little bit of history and background of information?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us, Jolene, and thanks for putting this together. We appreciate it. This is a kind of a fun, easy way to have a chat with you all. I've been the general manager here about 4.5 years. It will be 5 years in June. And prior to that, I was the manager of economic development and community relations for 5 years. So I've been with the REC for 10 years. And remarkably, in those 10 years, the amount of changes that have occurred in this industry they're fast and furious. There's no 2 years, 2 months the same anymore. So it is very, things are changing, things are moving, and it's exciting, but it is sometimes challenging to keep up and, do everything you want to do. I'll tell you a little bit of history about the co-op. We were formed in 1938, so 85 years ago. And I think it's kind of a fun fact that one of our founding board members was a female. And in 1938, that was pretty unusual. So I just think that's kind of a fun fact to share with folks. We have about 10,000 meters, about 7,500 members, and about 2,500 miles of line. We primarily serve the counties of Allamakee, Clayton, and Fayette, but we do actually touch into 4 other counties. We pay property taxes in every county that we have line. We have about 4 members per mile of line. And for our membership demographics, about 95% of our members are considered residential. So only about 5% of our load is commercial and industrial. And I actually have friends from other part of the country and even other parts of the state who are the exact opposite of that. They may have 95% commercial and industrial and only 5% residential. And I'll say there's unique challenges to both demographics. So that's just a quick little intro of who we are, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thank you for those. That's good perspective. I wonder if you could also tell us just a little bit about the differences between a rural electric cooperative and the distinctions from being a member of a cooperative and to maybe being a ratepayer on investor-owned utility line or municipal utility line.
And Ryan and I might tag team this one a little bit, but the main difference is that the members own the co-op. So I mean, really what our goal is to be able to pay all our bills and keep the lights on to the best way we can do it. And at the end, any leftover margin we have is returned to you, the members, and not, shareholders. And you're governed by a board of directors who you vote in. And they're members, obviously.
And they're members, yeah.
Too. Yeah. So when they make a decision, it affects them the same way it affects all of our other membership. And I'm a member as well.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, and so full disclosure too. So am I. And we've lived here. We've been on the REC lines now for 22 years. But the line fence that I can see out my office window divides us from Alliant Energy. So my neighbor is a rural Alliant Energy ratepayer, and everybody to the north of that line are members of the co-op. And I started thinking about that a little bit. It's probably back in the days when we started forming our energy district back in 2015. But I was thinking about how before I think ever since we've been married, which is 31 years, Jim and I, we have been rural electric cooperative members, but each of us grew up, I think in the Dubuque area, and it was interstate power. So before we even really knew what it meant to be buying our electricity, we've been rural cooperative members, which is interesting. It is a very different approach because you are a member, you do elect the people that will make the decisions that govern the rates. So would you mind talking just a little bit about that, about the election process, how often it happens and how often they meet, what that really means to be a director?
Sure. Before I get into that, though, you brought up something that I want to touch on about how, you are an REC member, and then right across the way is an Alliant member. And we have people ask that often, like, what? I'm so close, what's the distinction?
Yeah.
And we have a service territory. Iowa is a state that has service territory laws. So we have a defined service territory. And if you fall within that geographic area, you are a member of our electric utility. Otherwise, you're more than likely on Alliant. And back in the 30s, when interstate power came through, they essentially chose the larger population centers and said, this is what we're going to serve. And because we think we can make a profit here, and they sort of left everything else for the RECs. And that really is true. That's really how it shook out. And so the rural residents who were left without any electricity, they banded together and they came up with the money to start their own rural electric co-ops. And that was through the Rural Electrification Act in the 1930s. So that's kind of how co-ops came to be. And it's like that all across America, actually.
Yeah. I remember reading about it. Our daughter Jenna was one of your
youth tour. I remember her.
Yeah, and the book that they had to look at before they went on their trip to Washington. It does such a nice job. Yeah, it's not small. And that reminds me, there's actually like a common set of values, and you have a name for that, right? As for the rural electric for RECs.
Yeah, actually, it's on our. It's not. It's our principles. We have 7 guiding principles.
Yeah, and they go to all kinds of things regarding affordability and
care for community,
concern for community, working with our neighbor co-ops, safety and training, is our education for our staff and our board. Back to our board, though. Our boards are elected to a 3-year term. We have 3 from each district. We have our service territory is divided into 3 districts. So we have 9 directors, 3 from each district, and they're sort of on a rotating cycle. So we have 3 up for election every year. And the way it works is that spring, typically in May, well, actually a little bit sooner than that.
April.
April-ish, our board will get together and they'll come up with a list of folks who they think would be good on a nominating committee. That means those people will come in, they'll look at our membership list, and they will decide these are the people who we'd like you to seek out and ask if they would run for the board. We think that they would be good representatives of our communities. We think that they have a little bit of business acumen. They might know a little bit about the utility business, a variety of things. Mm-hmm. And then we reach out to those people who were nominated by the nominating committee to see if they would care to run for our board.
And they place those names in a specific order that they determine. We do not determine the order. So if Jolene Jansen is number 1, I have to get a yes or no out of Jolene before I can move on to the next person.
Oh, okay.
So there is a little bit of a time crunch-ish to say, hey, I need a commitment. You can't wait weeks and months. I need to know in days. Are you interested in? We acquire them then, but just want to make that a point that there is.
There's a priority list, which makes sense.
The nominating committee prioritizes how they'd like them, how they'd like our staff to approach them.
Yeah, and so REC co-op members who would like to be on the nomination committee, do they just submit their names for that? Or
They can just call in and say we'd like to be on the nominating committee.
And we, if we have any of those, we hold on. If you were to call in today, we would hold on to the next nominating committee. We would present that name to them, and then more than likely they're going to put that in that list somewhere.
Yeah.
It's up to them whether or not they accept it, but we do present them with that name.
Okay, that's great.
And the board works really hard. You know, I've told them we need a variety of folks on this nominating committee, because then they'll come up with a variety of individuals to run for our board. So our
Right.
board has gotten really good about trying to, you know, think outside of the box and come up with people from all different walks of life, and is to serve on the nominating committee. So when it comes to the nominating committee and selection of individuals to run for the board, myself and the staff, we have absolutely nothing to do with it. We have no say. We have no,
we spend a fair amount of time to make sure that it's obvious that we don't have any influence.
yeah, we have no
I guess is
influence.
Well, and that makes sense. And that is really the elementary difference between, or the foundational difference between an investor-owned utility and really, and a municipally owned utility is also does not, you don't elect that. You just, if you live in that territory, then you're going to get your power from your municipal utility. So I appreciate that distinction. Not to go backwards, but I just thought that this was interesting. Is the other thing that I learned back when Jenna was getting ready for her youth tour is the story that the RECs really got started because of Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson from Texas. And his mom lived in rural, I believe, West Texas, and she worked really, really hard and was, you know, was doing laundry by hand with a washboard. And he just saw that injustice and lobbied FDR, I believe, and they went to work on putting together the rural electrification, or the rural electric cooperative legislation that we all rural residents of the country benefit from. Without it, gosh, what a difference it would have been. It would have been very unjust without having.
There's 811 cooperatives
Yeah.
in the United States and 31 in the state of Iowa.
Oh, really? That's interesting to know.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger group than a lot of people or members realize. I mean, it's
that our member. Yeah.
Oh, and I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say that RECs serve about 50% of United States land mass. I might be a little wrong. It's a lot. It's roughly 50. We serve about, I mean, of course, it's not always the big population centers. It's largely the rural areas, but I want to say it's about 50% of the United States is served by RECs.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and that's not surprising to me. Okay, so I wanted to talk stats a little bit. We kind of had some priority topics, or a list of topics that we were going to cover. So we were going to talk about energy efficiency and energy burden. We're also going to talk about electrification opportunities and community solar. I highlighted the questions that I really wanted to hit before, if we had an open questions that our guests wanted to ask. But I think really what I'm hoping, Ryan, and it might be more for this recording purposes, but I know that there are plenty of REC members in our energy district area, which we know we have an energy district in Allamakee County, we have an energy district in Clayton County, and we have lots of folks that follow the energy districts in Fayette. So I am just really always kind of a little surprised at the number of folks that don't know a lot about the energy efficiency measures that are available to them to take part in. And then what goes on to that, the idea of electrifying their building and taking part or taking advantage of the REC rebate. So if you don't mind, it's a little bit going through the middle of our topics, but if you wouldn't mind talking about why there are rebates offered by ACEC and what those rebates are. I'm not sure everybody on the call maybe wants to know all about that, but I know that our people who might play this later would be interested.
Our rebates are based on the fact that trying to get people into more efficient equipment. Period. That's what they're made for, is to incentivize somebody to buy a washer, a dryer that's Energy Star rated, an air source heat pump, things of that nature that are more efficient. the first thing is to become as efficient as you can before really you start looking at renewables. If you're just going to jump into the renewable side, you're masking a problem you already have, or you're overbuilding what you truly really need. So our rebates are, just to run through them quickly, heat pump water heaters, $300. Hang on a second. Air source heat pumps. Let me back up. Air source heat pump, like your mini splits, are $300 per ton. Ground source heat pumps, your geo units, are $500 per ton. Your electric vehicle chargers are 50% of the cost of the charger, up to $400. You can get into them from anywhere between $250 to $1,000. It just depends on what you want. Appliances, dishwashers, refrigerators, freezers, washers, dryers, $25 per appliance, as long as they're Energy Star rated. Some of the good majority of freezers aren't. There's not a lot of freezers that are Energy Star, but many of your fridges, dishwashers, washer, dryers are. Inductive range, $25 rebate. Dehumidifiers is a $25 rebate if they're Energy Star. What else is there? LED lamps, 50 cents a lamp, minimum of 5. Recycling of appliances, another $25. So if you, with a refrigerator, fridge, freezer, and air conditioner, like a window air unit, is a $25 rebate.
So do you want to explain that? So if someone has a window air unit and they replace that with a more efficient window air unit?
Just if they recycle it. If you have a window air unit, we don't have a rebate for the window air, but if you were to recycle it, we have $25.
Oh, cool. Okay.
For that. And with all of these, there's a rebate form on our website. For any of these, go to the website. It's a fillable PDF, or you print it, fill it, send it in with a copy of the invoice. And if you miss a box, or there's quite a few that come through not filled out correctly. So
we just send them in blank with the receipt. And believe it or not, Ryan
we fill them out. We'll work with you. It's a pretty easy process. We don't, as long as it's Energy Star and it looks like you've got most stuff there, it might take a phone call to get it resolved, but we do work with them very well to get it taken care of. So on the efficiency side, yes, we promote efficiency. I've never understood, it was one of them, when you come from a contractor world, everything's about making a profit. My background was as an electrician doing wiring and making money for the company. When you come to a cooperative, it's not about making money. It's more customer service and becoming more efficient. And we're in an industry where it seems like we're trying to cut our throat at some points, use less and keep our rates low, but use less of what we have to offer.
Right. Yeah.
As far as the energy efficiency and how we promote it with new homes, especially, I reach out to them and explain our rebates. We have partnered with Winneshiek Energy District. We do have a $500 rebate they're kind of renaming it right now, but it's the Touchstone Home Energy Checklist. And with Winneshiek Energy District, the reason we've gone with Winneshiek, they have certified energy raters like Paul Cutting. And Paul, if you were to call Paul and set it up, you frame up your house, you get it insulated. They will do a blower door test. They will look at it before, during, and after with you. And they will say, hey, here's what we're seeing. You need to address with this blower door test pre-drywall. Hey, you need to correct these things. Therefore, getting them into a more comfortable, affordable home. They can also do an energy audit with an existing home, but we don't pay for the audit. We pay for the improvements. We would pay up to $500 if they determine you need new windows, or you need a new door, or you need more insulation. They do those measures and we'll give them up to $500. We constantly are putting things in our newsletters, website to promote energy efficiency. Media. Yeah.
I know we did a big social media campaign. I think maybe the month of November, that every week was different tips on how to save energy. Just maybe even simple little things like, seal your windows. If you have a leaky door, put something to block the draft, things like that.
It's always surprising to me, just driving around, how many people, you see the air source heat pump, especially the mini splits, are very easy to spot. I always joke that I could almost make a second part-time job just filling out the paperwork for them. How many people don't send it in? Don't apply for it. And it's a very simple thing to do. I mean, we keep it that way so it isn't a burden for them to do.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really the case. We here at the Clayton County Energy District, well, within the energy district movement in general, we're all part of the same
And
clean energy districts.
a lot of it is, I think, I talked to our contractors and try and get them on the, just to promote it. We have some that are really good about it. And, they are selling the system and it helps them with their sale. They can show that little bit of savings, some money off through your utility. That's probably where we need to hit the most, is at the contractor level, saying you need to promote an air source heat pump over your standard gas 96% efficient furnace, and a straight air conditioner. Push them to the air source heat pump. Some are really good about new technologies, some not so much. They just want to do what they've done for the last 25, 30 years. So.
Yeah, and it's the sourcing of the equipment. It is a lot of what and you're more efficient as a contractor in doing what you've done for year after year. But in the end, if they can connect that idea, like I was saying, is we do try to make sure that people that in our energy district are aware of the rebate opportunities when they electrify. Especially without whatever utility they're being served by, but that is a big part of it because there is a significant incentive.
Well, yeah,
to electrify.
With the Inflation Reduction Act, with your incentives there, our rebates, it really starts driving the cost down. The tax incentives and then the rebates as well of the IRA. Yeah,
hopefully those rebates will be available.
Yeah, I have called in the past. I just called this morning too to the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and I have not heard anything back. I left a message, and yeah, that's the struggle. Is I just have a spreadsheet where I keep the name and what they're looking to do, and then as soon as I know something, I'll let them know. As far as how they, especially on the rebate side, the tax incentive is one thing. You can take that to your accountant with your taxes, but on the rebate, how that's all going to play out to me yet is undetermined. I mean, everything I've seen is coming in 2024 is what it says. And
let's hope it's 24. And it will be nice to know whether or not those low-income households and moderate-income households who do put in a mini heat split or do put in a geothermal heat pump or a water heater, that those rebates, will it be when they buy the appliance? Will it be something that they've got to, that the contractor needs to process for them? Just knowing those mechanics, but it is up to Iowa's energy office to determine that. And, we just know that they'll be there, but it's really hard to promote something until we know the details. So, but I appreciate it. And it is an interesting thing because we know that those rebates, they're not small. The Inflation Reduction Act is providing quite a rebate program available to low and moderate income households that really will get to energy burden relief. And it's hard when you're talking to those folks like, hey, keep this in mind, but our furnace is out, and so that kind of thing you can't wait on some of it. But that being said, I would like to talk to you a little bit about I had kind of mentioned this of talking about energy burden, and for those on the call, just the energy burden is kind of uniformly defined as energy burden equals an annual utility bills divided by your annual income. So an energy burden rate that is above 6% is considered high. So the Clayton County Energy District and other energy districts have done this study using the Department of Energy's low income data affordability tool. And we've determined that 48% of Clayton County residents experience energy burdens higher than 6%. Notably, the county's poorest residents pay the most energy as a percentage pay the most for energy as a percent of income. So the county's 600 lowest income households use well over 20% of their annual income for home energy costs. And these poorer households are often energy inefficient and use higher cost heating fuels like propane and less efficient resistive electric heat. So many of these folks are living in rural Clayton County. So does the ACEC have ideas on encouraging those residents to consider switching their heating space? And I think you kind of already talked about that, and their water heating methods to more efficient heat pump technologies. And I guess you kind of just answered that, but I'm wondering how we get to those folks that maybe don't. I mean, there's a lot of us that have means. Brian, you know about our place here where we use a geothermal, waterless geothermal technology to heat our home. We drive an electric car, and we're very blessed and have those opportunities and have the connections to know how to take advantage of that. But that connecting it to those folks that are certainly on the REC lines that have big silver bullets in their backyard full of propane. And I know that that's maybe, I don't know that you want to be saying, oh yeah, go electric and leave propane, but there is that there is just now that technology that just really is sort of, I mean, the jury's no longer out. It's cheaper to use a heat pump.
We have a delinquency rate that is really industry, like, how do I want to say it?
Top 1% for
our delinquency rate is way low. Now that doesn't mean there are people that may not be burdened, but our delinquency rate is like less than 0.25%.
When
you say delinquency, what do you mean exactly?
That they
don't pay their bill.
Don't pay their bill within. I mean, we give them the third month you're getting served disconnect notice. That is basically the people that are getting a disconnect notice, and then actually, that 0.25% they would be the delinquency notice, not that we disconnect.
But they're receiving the notices on a regular basis.
And I would say I've done postings before, and I'm not going to characterize it as all, but it's always disappointing when you're posting somebody and it's 10 o'clock in the morning in the summer and all their outside lights are on and the garage door and there's nobody to be found. And so, yeah, I understand there is a burden, but there's a burden of lots of things, and unfortunately right now, but there's a lot of things they can do to help themselves, and how you teach that, I don't have the answer for that. I guess I would look at it as if I offered you an incandescent light bulb at 60 cents or an LED at $3, they're probably going to opt for the cheaper of the two because they're not doing the math to see what pays in the long term. It's just what is cheap at the moment. That's where our government steps in and says no more incandescents, and and
which I believe that's the case, isn't it? Isn't it, are incandescent light bulbs even in production anymore?
No, they finally did stop.
And something I think we see from some of the folks that continually struggle to pay their bills, like Ryan said, some of it is, habits. People have bad habits too, just leaving the lights on, maybe having the air or the heat on higher than it probably is recommended that you keep it. That actually makes a really big difference, the few degrees. But some of these are rental units where people are living in these rental homes, and the landlord or the owner, whoever, they may not even live in this area. So they don't necessarily care that much about that big inefficient home that they're renting out. Really, we see that often.
I just had a phone call with a gentleman yesterday regarding that same scenario, and you're caught as a tenant. They don't want to stick any money in the house, and you're paying high bills. Those are tough situations.
We see that more often than you'd think in these big old rural farmhouses. A vacant, or not vacant, but a landlord who lives elsewhere.
Absent landlords. Definitely know that's the case. I believe the Inflation Reduction Act does create a lane for renters to get out of that situation where they are really being burdened by the cost to heat their homes. And I wish that I could be more astute on how to know that's there, but I believe that that's one of the strategies that the Inflation Reduction Act is aimed towards, and that is to try to bring the concept of energy justice and democracy to the forefront and to help people that are living in that low income housing or are low income and living in housing that they rent, because that's usually going to be the case, right? If they have low incomes to begin with, they're probably going to need to rent. The idea of owning that property. But I do think that there's opportunities for, and again, we don't have the rebate process in place right now, but renters to take advantage of that. And then it'll be on all of us to communicate the good news. So yeah, I appreciate the conversation, and I know that is a real problem, is living in these inefficient homes that you don't own, and how do you change that circumstance?
Yeah, I've seen homes where they're just for their electric heat was more than they would probably pay for rent. It's a hard conversation to have, and you know, it's like you could actually go into your neighboring town and rent and have 2/3 of your rent paid for, you know, with what you're paying in heat.
Yeah.
How do you tell them that your best opportunity is to move out, to get out of this situation? You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, you know, and that's again within the model of an REC, that's a cooperative. You know, I'm sure you have opportunities to look at your meter connections and say, well, geez, this thing is just, I mean, you know, they're just buried in electric costs. And is that not part of your work too, is to kind of guide folks on that? And
Ryan has candid conversations with our members.
But
often
you don't,
like
there's always a line. You don't want to cross and get too personal into their life. But you do have to have that kind of that hard conversation and say, I don't know what to tell you other than your best bet is to, like I said, to get out of this situation. But there again, it snowballs. Where are they going to go? There's no housing available right now. You know, housing is tough to find.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to move out of their kids' school district, or there's a variety of reasons why people may choose to stay in a real inefficient home.
Yeah. Well, you know, back to that idea of being detectives and looking for energy efficiency improvements. Do you offer like smart outlets or that kind of thing? I know we actually have a grant from you to stock libraries with these smart outlets, but what about you folks?
We do a lot of time. If somebody calls in and they're concerned, first thing we do is we look at their past history. Okay. So if you call Jolene, if you were to call in and say, you know, my bill is higher, we don't look at the dollars per se right off the bat. We look at your consumption. How many kilowatt hours did Jolene use a year ago, October versus this October? And say, okay, wow, you are double. Yeah. I'm not doing anything different. Okay. Well, then something's going on. Then we get into our metering data and start looking at, wow, you are using X amount of kilowatt hours per day on a consistent basis. Then we look at that day and say it's constant, or it's up and down about these times. Well, I'm gone, or whatever it is. And you can find a stuck well, basically stuck meaning running all the time from the office almost. Go out there, or it's cycling a lot. If that is it, or it isn't a water heater continually heating, or whatever it is, a heater on somewhere that they forgot, or they thought turn the thermostat, they're all off. Well, they're not if the breaker isn't off. You can't be guaranteed, and you find out one is still running. If that can't be determined, yes, we offer a kilowatt meter that is just a simple plug-in device to an appliance, and you plug it in the wall. You record for a week, a day, 2 weeks. We'll leave it however long you want. And then you do the math and say, okay, that fridge, that freezer, whatever that 110 volt device is, uses this much per month based on this week's worth of data. Take it times 4, take it times the rate. So it's costing you $4 a month, okay, for that garage fridge. That's perfectly acceptable. That's what they run. Now, if it's more than that, okay, you might want to consider the gas getting shot. Yes, I would suggest getting a new one. Now, if it's more complex, they've got a hot tub, they've got electric water heater, they've got air conditioning running, they've got all these things. I always battled trying to find the right meter, and just this last month found one that is working really, really slick. And there's 16 different CTs I can put on 16 circuits, and I can cover the main incoming power, and then you can label them per circuit, and I can say, here's what your water heater used, here's what your air conditioner used, here's what all these different circuits used. And then we can kind of, like I said, you can kind of break it down. Now it only does 16 circuits. You might have 40. New house is going to probably have 50 to 60 circuits in the house, but you can pick out your big ones. By having the main wires covered, it will show you the difference of what you're metering on the 16 versus what's coming in, and say, whoa, we're missing something because there's a very large difference. So somewhere on one of those other circuits, we need to find out what that is. But it's a real big advancement for us. So I'm really excited. I've used it once and it worked really slick. So yeah, we're kind of excited. I'm excited to use it. And no, I don't like it any more than the member. I want to have answers, and I want to be able to present them with the right answer. And nothing is worse to me than standing there saying, well, you're using it, you know.
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
We can just look at that meter.
Well, they're using it, but
I want to, right? Yeah, right.
They're using it, but I want to be able to tell them where they're using it. I'd say, well, it's just here somewhere, you know.
Yeah, well, and on a plug for energy districts, that is something that we do through our energy coaching program. We're hoping, because of the IRA and several other grants, to be able to have more coaches available to do just that. So we have these energy monitoring devices too. The one that we're using is through Emporia, and I have one actually right now in our fuse box, and that's exactly it.
That's what I bought.
Yeah, and I love it. And so we want to make sure that, we want to give that out to folks. And right now, that I should probably put that plug in that we are working on. We have this younger clean energy education for younger library patrons, and the REC and Clayton County Foundation for the Future have funded that grant. And so we have a science teacher, Jill Donlin, or Jill Standard, excuse me. And she is putting on programs in, I think, 6 county libraries. And we have a little energy wheel that we use that shows the amount of work that it takes to power an incandescent light bulb, and the amount of work that it takes to power an LED light bulb. And then the REC funded our purchase of a bunch of another Emporia product, but a smart outlet. And she uses them in the library, and she shows kids how they work. And then there's a bit of a sweepstakes or whatever for someone to gain. There's 10 in each library as giveaways. Some libraries might use them as rental pieces of equipment, like they can check out a smart outlet, like they can check out a book. And some are using them, they'll just give them away. But from what I hear from Jill, using them in the classroom, using them in the libraries, they are really doing what we hope would happen. And that is what you and I know about power today is so much more than what our families, our parents knew. And certainly what LBJ's mom knew about electricity and modern electricity. But we're hoping that the kids that our kids grow up with even more understanding. And so thank you, REC, for doing that. What I wanted to ask one more question before we open it up to the crowd here, and that's regarding the community solar and solar generation projects that are available through the IRA. And I know that ACEC is working on that. Do you guys want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. So we have 2 projects that we're in the midst of. One that has been asked to move on to the full grant or full application. That is with a third-party company that will own and operate the solar system. We will buy all the energy and sell all the energy. So we're just basically in the middle on that. The other project, if we were to get the grant, we will own and operate. And these, I don't want to get into a lot of details yet on them, but they're in the megawatts. It's going to be a multi-megawatt system based in Allamakee County. The second one is a New Era grant. We have submitted the letter of interest. We've heard back a couple times requesting a little more information that we've submitted. So fingers are crossed. Asking for more information means they're looking at it harder than maybe some others. So regardless, if we do not get that, we would take that size of that system and just add it to the one that we've already started, that's already been approved. So yeah, we are in the midst of working on something that would last 30 to potentially 40 years.
So
system.
tell us more about it. So you're contracting out a solar build out, and you're going the developer is going to sell power back to.
So
Allamakee
we
Clayton?
have a power purchase agreement with Darylin, so we cannot generate all of our electrical needs.
Right.
We have basically a carve out from them a certain amount that we can do.
that we can generate on
And
our own.
and that's what we're doing, is trying to maximize that,
Our
I
carve.
gotcha.
our carve out.
So we size these projects to essentially match our carve out that Dairyland has granted us.
Mhm.
And one of the projects, like I said, will be owned and operated by a third party. So they sell all the energy is sold to us, and then we sell it all to Darylin. And so there's a margin in between for us, is how it
Okay.
works. Now, the
All
second
right.
one is very similar as far as the contractual aspects, other than we would own it. So we would be buying it from ourselves, or, at a lower rate, basically.
On the carve out, does that mean that you do have several solar arrays, but are they actually Darylin solar arrays? Obviously
We
not
have
the one that's at the main office. That's community solar, right?
we
Yeah.
have 281 member owned solar systems, okay, on there at the residence. We have one
Oh, okay,
community
yeah.
solar. We have one community solar at our office, and that's it currently. We do
Oh,
not
and
have.
what's the one in Strawberry? That's a Darylin.
That's Dairyland owns that. That's
Oh,
their.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
That's
So
part of
the-
their overall
the new-
generation portfolio.
So the new builds will be part of your carve out. So like you have to, a certain percentage you can generate for your generation portfolio. And that you're saying, and you're receiving IRA grants for that? Is that, or you're
hope.
waiting here on the
We hope.
one?
We hope.
We hope to, yes.
The pace is, like I said, has moved on to all they have to do is the application. They have been approved. They just have to fill out the paperwork, and that's moving forward. We just have not heard yet on the new era side of things. Now, we could have gambled and put it all in new era and then got nothing potentially. So we
did a little
felt
bit.
we would go both ways, a little bit in both. This way, if we don't get the new era, we can still take that size of that system and add it to the pace yet. So
Okay.
we're at the point where right now with the pace, we have a few megawatts sitting there. We can pull some of that out and put it in the new era. We can juggle between them a little bit. Now, if we don't get the new era, it all stays with the pace grant.
We tried to be strategic with our applications to ensure we'd get the most bang for our
Then-
buck, essentially.
The new era offers us more money. 30% tax credit, 25% grant, and then there's some other adders potentially in their community energy district. American made another 10%. So
All of that, yeah.
you can get potentially a lot, but if we were to go 100%, take everything and throw it in there and not get it, then we're out. We got nothing. We ended up getting nothing. So we
Right.
decided it'd be best to try both.
So what does that mean to the co-op member? How many megawatts are we talking about, and how does it percolate down to a co-op member? The
Well,
new build out.
like I said, I'm not going to get into the size of the system yet because it's not 100%. But what it's going to do is it's going to generate a profit basically, and
Bottom
that's significant to help
Stabilize rate.
stabilize our rates, to keep our rates down.
Okay.
That's
Gotcha.
what it's for. It's just going to be it just goes into the general fund. It's just income.
We're hoping that, by getting these projects up, getting the potential discounts, having them generate, the end of the day, our hope for the membership benefit is that it will stabilize rates.
Okay. And the knowledge that it's not necessarily being generated at a coal plant. It's
Exactly, right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe that gets me to the couple of the last questions, and we'll still have some time for our guests to ask questions. Is on that concept of distributed generation, not the projects that you're talking about. I know that we've actually, I think Ryan, you were on one of our virtual tours and talking with a couple of co-op members who have solar panels, but they're in Postville and they live over by Volga. So not talking about that project, but those that have solar like I do. And you said how many connections?
281. We've
Yeah.
got more applications, but 281 as of October, we're hooked up and generating.
Okay, so do you want to talk a little bit about net metering for, let's say, a rural customer that's going to do a new build? What does that mean for them? How does it work to be a co-op member? And because you can't use all your power that you generate, most of the power that we are making right now is going out onto the lines. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that.
For those that don't know, net metering is, I guess what it is what the description is. You're netting it out at the end of a certain period. So you're taking what you've produced versus what you've consumed, and you're basically subtracting them. So if Jolene produced 1,000 kilowatt hours and she only used 500, she overproduced 500, and then we would pay them for her at the monthly avoided cost rate. So we have monthly net metering. We do not offer annual. We did until 2017. You have net metering and you have real-time metering. Real-time means as it's being generated, if it is not being consumed at that very moment, you're only getting avoided costs or whatever the contract is, the cost at that point. So net metering is, whether it's annual, monthly, there's a benefit to net metering for everybody.
What about though the situation within the month? So if you put some kilowatts out onto the line and then at night you need that, is there not like a virtual bank of kilowatts for those customers?
No. It's just math. It's just a meter that's seeing it going out and seeing it coming in, and you took a reading at the end of the month versus the beginning of the next month and doing the math. That's all it is. You're just doing the math. And we either owe you or you owe us.
Right.
If we owe you, we only owe you at the avoided cost rate, which is determined monthly. It is, last year it averaged 5.5 cents. This year will probably be about 3 cents. It's a little lower. Now that can change month to month. I've seen months where it's worth 8 cents a kilowatt hour. It just depends on basically the MISO system demand for the month. If you think back to Texas when they had all the issues, when the entire nation was cold in February of 2 years ago. Yeah, February 2020 when we had, that's when it was significant, worth some money. It was about 7 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour for that.
Because there was a grab for kilowatts. There was a shortage, and that makes sense. And so, but just to be clear, if somebody were going to add solar, they built a really electric ready home, they wanted to generate a certain amount of solar. First of all, I should have asked this at first, is there a certain amount, are you size limited when you're on the REC lines?
Yep.
40
kW AC. You cannot go above 40 kW AC. It's really, I should restate that, 39.99.
Okay.
You don't want to even hit 40.
And if you do go above that, I mean, you can, but then you're working directly with Dairyland. And you're a real-time meter.
It becomes a different contract. You've gone to a different level, and that level then becomes a real-time contract. And that gets, we only have one.
And that's a different, we're really talking about the residential DG or locally owned or rooftop solar, whatever. You're not looking at systems that are that large.
In residential, residential folks who would want to put up solar, we strongly encourage them to size it to their needs.
Mm-hmm.
The overproduction. I think sometimes there's some contractors out there who say, "Oh yeah, build this size," and and then people, they're not getting the payback that they thought they would get, and then they're kind of upset with us. They're upset with their contractor. So we really encourage people to size it to their needs. That's the best situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's certainly from an energy district's point of view, that's certainly what we encourage. But I suppose the 40 kW you're talking about, those applications are like,
Hog barns.
Yeah, I was just gonna say hog barns.
Large dairies.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have asked a lot of questions and guided this conversation. I would like to just see if does anybody on the call want to put their question in the chat or go off mute and just sort of put your
It looks
questions
like
out
there's
there?
one in the chat right now.
Oh, is there? Why am I not seeing them?
Oh, it's for Ryan. Want to read it out loud, Ryan?
So as you mentioned, dehumidifiers and air source heat pumps. Is there an air source heat pump which can also provide dehumidification or can easily with a dehumidifier? Well, the air source heat pump water heater is probably what you'd want. If you're looking for dehumidification, would be the air source heat pump water heater. So what an air source heat pump water heater does is it takes heat out of the ambient air and basically puts it into the tank. It is like it's equivalent to about a 1-ton air conditioner inside your house. So the water heater needs to have a drain line or a drain access wherever you position it. You need to run a drain line for the water, for the dehumidification. Now, air source heat pump water heaters, there's different modes. There's heat pump only, heat pump with electric backup. They do have an electric resistance element in them so that if it can't keep up with your demand, it switches over to electric. Your best option is, I'm going to say 5 to 6 months a year, run it in the heat pump mode with a backup and electric. And then in the winter time, you've got to understand you're pulling heat out of your house. You may not want to pull heat air that you've preheated and put it in your tank. You probably just want to switch over to electric only. Unfortunately, the ones I've seen installed are always set just to electric, and they just paid a lot of money for an electric water heater. They shouldn't. They should know that that's the option. That's the best way to handle them. But that does do dehumidification, therefore making it a lot more efficient, because dehumidifiers are probably the #1 most inefficient product in a house today. You would be surprised how many people have them and don't realize how much energy they use.
People will get a new one and then the next month call and be like, my bill is so high. And one of the first questions, did you get a new dehumidifier? Oh yeah.
A dehumidifier typically draws about 6 amps at 120 volts or 3/4 of a kW. So you're looking at 18 kilowatt hours a day or 500 to 600 kilowatt hours a month if it ran nonstop. And there are some basements that they run nonstop, and they have 2. And so if you've got to use it, you've got to use it. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying understand what they cost.
Same with hot tubs. They're a big energy sucker too.
Yeah.
People will get a new hot tub and not realize what it will do to their bill the next month.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. Were there any other questions?
One thing I would like to just hit on briefly about solar and generating your own energy is, #1, biggest thing, do not just jump online and fill out something and have somebody from out of state come. I've seen it too many times. People are getting into some situations that they should not be getting into. Give us a call. We will do a solar analysis for free that gives you a rough idea of how many dollars it's going to cost you. We do not know what it takes you may have to redo your electrical service. I can't tell that from the office, but it gives you a dollar amount saying, wow, I didn't realize it's that much, or not. That's about what I thought, and I want to pursue it. With that, I also include a list of local contractors that we've worked well with for years.
Well trusted.
They can call on and get quotes and move forward. So that's what we want to see, is to use our local people. And when I say local, it's from Owine, Iowa to southern Minnesota so they've done a great job. They do great work. You've had it installed by a local, contractor. And although solar and generating your own is not less work for the cooperative, it actually is more administrative, and it's going to get more and more and more demanding as more come on. We're a long ways from it, but at some point you're going to have energy flowing in directions it's never flowed before and require more infrastructure, and it can cause more problems too.
We do. I mean, the idea that we are designed to distribute electricity. So when it's coming back on our lines, we have to figure out how to deal with that safely. I know that there's some feeders on other co-ops that have become overloaded and they can't take any more solar on.
because
there's
everybody's
just
gone to work during the day and you have it flowing more, flowing the other direction. So,
Well, I hear what you're saying. I think that and as what the point of a community energy district is to strengthen our communities, really to spend less on our energy costs and to have more for our communities, and that's really what we look to do. And I also know that, like I had mentioned earlier, the technology and what we know today that we didn't know yesterday is amazing. And so hopefully we can all grow together so that we minimize the amount of money that we spend on our energy, which we just have to. I mean, I do this a lot in my talks. I say, how much power, or did you get to where you are in the last 5 minutes with using no energy or a lot of energy? And we all need it. We can't survive without it. So it's go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
And we need to realize that we need to look at all aspects for power generation. We cannot write off coal plants. I receive a lot of calls. People are really concerned about having power. And I understand exactly. I mean, when they see Genoa and they see Lansing power plants going down, and all they hear in the news media is brownouts, blackouts, and it's a real thing. It can happen, and we have been. It's getting closer. Unfortunately, hopefully we don't see it, but it could get to the point where we have 2-hour notice that we have to go to substations and start turning power off to keep the grid from crashing. We haven't got there, but we've gotten fairly close once, and that's not what we don't want it any more than anybody else does. And
I mean,
it's
capacity
we all need it. And as we move forward with this clean energy transition and doing electrification, which is just making a big difference. I mean, we all know, we've talked a lot about electric vehicles. We didn't talk about it today, but I know that that's a big part of what the REC is really trying to push, is that electrification of transportation. We're going to have to figure out lots of ways to power our lives, and it will take a lot. It will take a varied way. Battery storage is something that we didn't talk about today, but and those smart meters and figuring out smart electrification, a smart grid.
Capacity, our nation's power generation capacity is probably the #1 issue that keeps me up at night. Just hoping that there'll be enough, hoping that we'll be able to meet the needs. And our grid is in terrible shape. I mean, until your grid sees some, and I don't mean a little bit, I mean major, I mean billions of dollars worth of upgrades. I don't know what we're going to do in the congestion. I mean, this is high level and this is something that I deal with, but the congestion levels right now on our grid is troubling.
The permitting, the regulations,
the siting.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, people are waiting years and years, nearly a decade, to get a transmission line sited. It's great if we get these large scale renewable projects in place, but if we don't have the transmission to bring the power to the population centers, we're in trouble.
And that's why we have to promote energy efficiency and be as efficient with what we have. We have to.
We do. We really have to. Efficiency is more important now than ever, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. And that's sort of the song that we sing all the time with the energy district. So, well, thank you so much, Hollee and Ryan, for joining us today. I really appreciate, your open communication and taking the time to answer some of these questions and telling us a little bit more about the cooperative move, or the cooperative method or utility model. And, as we know, we don't get to choose where we're going to be. So I, for one, am very glad to be a member of the REC Co-op, and it's a very different experience. There's pros and cons to all of it, but all we know is that we all need power to get through our days. So we appreciate what you're doing to run the cooperative the way you are, and Thank you very much.
Our phone lines are open
Yeah.
7:30 to 4 and our doors are the same. So all you got to do is call or stop in and we're happy to talk to you.
And I was going to say, if anybody really had a question and they just didn't want to ask it out
Yeah.
loud, just give Ryan or I a call or an email and we'd be happy to visit. So
All right.
thanks
Well,
for having us.
Yep. Thanks, Julie.
Yep.
thank you. All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye. Have a good afternoon, everyone.